Today, gather round everyone and hear me talk about Final Fantasy VII some more. This is CheckPoint. Welcome to CheckPoint and happy BC Day.
Well, if you're in British Columbia anyway.
Right, yes. A happy Saskatchewan Day, or New Brunswick Day, or Terry Fox Day, or George Hamilton Day, or Alexander Mackenzie Day, or just happy civic holiday, okay? The first Monday in August is the holiday equivalent of the middle square in bingo. Use it for whatever you want.
Of course, we don't get the day off because the internet doesn't get civic holidays, but at least there's overtime pay.
That's not a thing we get either.
Wow, this is toilets.
It could be worse. We could work for Konami. As if Konami hadn't been making some very questionable business decisions recently, some would say for much longer than recently, a new report from Nikkei reveals that working for Konami is actually way more soul-crushing than being one of their customers. The report details such Orwellian maneuvers as making employees punch out for their lunch breaks, and if they return late, shaming them by announcing their names throughout the company. One of the most messed up actions mentioned in the report is reassigning employees who are no longer considered useful to janitorial or security positions. And it's not like they're just picking on entry-level programmers or something, but producers for well-known game titles. One senior employee went from game development to a Konami factory that makes pachinko machines. Konami is allegedly so petty that when an employee posted to Facebook that they were leaving the company, some other employees who liked the post were restructured within the company. That is high school levels of petty. No wonder Kojima wanted to get out of Konami. Maybe now he can work on games for a company who will allow his department's computers to be connected to the internet.
As you might have heard, Ouya has passed on. The console is no more. Ceased to be. Expired and gone to meet its maker. A stiff, bereft of life, it rests in peace. You get the idea. Unfortunately for Ouya developers, the company didn't exactly put its affairs in order before selling out to Razer. You might remember that Ouya had a fund called Free the Games. Basically, if your game raised over $10,000 on Kickstarter, they would match your funding in exchange for making the game a timed Ouya exclusive. The money would be paid in installments, 50% when you had a playable beta, 25% at launch, and then 25% after the exclusivity period was over. Except now that Ouya has shuffled off this mortal coil, it doesn't have to honor any of those outstanding Free the Games payments. This was a surprise to many developers who had signed contracts that had budgeted their development around these payments. It was also a surprise to Razer, who didn't know they'd be inheriting about $620,000 in additional unpaid debts. The internet was widely relieved when Razer announced they would honor the payments, but unfortunately for developers, the terms of the deal are now very different. Say you, a developer, are still owed $5,000. The good news is that Razer is still going to give you that $5,000. And since Ouya is no more, your game doesn't need to be a timed Ouya exclusive. However, the reason Razer bought Ouya was to get its store and library of games, which will now be rebranded as Cortex TV, an Android store available on a huge variety of devices. In exchange for giving you the $5,000 you're owed, Razer now gets $5,000 worth of your game. Say you were selling it for $2. That means Razer gets 2,500 free copies of your game to give away on Cortex TV, which is great for helping them market their new store, but shitty for you because if you release your game through any other distribution service, you could easily end up competing against the free version of your own game. And even if your game is popular on Cortex TV, you won't see a dime until it's sold that $2,500 or that 2,500 copies. That's a lot of copies. And so sure, it's nice to get your $5,000, but it's no longer part of your development budget. It's an advance. And where do we know the term advance from? Oh yes! Notoriously unfair music industry contracts. The kind that kept all but the most successful artists locked into musical serfdom, permanently indebted to their labels. Delightful.
Tetsuya Nomura, director of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, has said the remake will take visual references and inspiration from the Final Fantasy Advent Children movie, which he also directed. Additionally, the active time battle system, colloquially known in this office as Graham's favorite Final Fantasy battle system, will be overhauled with, to quote Nomura, dramatic changes. I mean, this is basically what I was expecting. With Nomura at the helm, it was too much to hope they would make the same game but pretty. Which is what would have been the smart move, by the way, because then, if anyone complains, they can just say, look, this is what you wanted. This is exactly what you asked for. The same game with new HD graphics. Now that they're messing it up, they're going to ruin it for the people they're actually making the game for. The hype train is leaving Sector 7.
Do you love Fallout? Have you always dreamed of having a Pip-Boy of your very own, but without the obvious downside of actually having to live in the Fallout universe? Well, if you didn't get your hands on one of those incredibly hard-to-find Fallout 4 special Pip-Boy editions, tough cookies, because they're gone. All gone, according to Bethesda's Pete Hines. And they've turned out so many to try and meet demand, the factories that make them physically can't add any more production capacity. The manufacturers in charge of making the special editions have already had to alter their other production runs to make more Pip-Boys, but at this point they can't keep making them because they need to clear the lines to make other things for other clients. So if you're one of those many disappointed people who won't be wearing a cool but probably incredibly heavy, unwieldy, and likely uncomfortable Pip-Boy, at least you can take comfort in the fact that they're apparently not even that rare anyhow.
The new Kickstarter from Comcept, Red Ash the Indelible Legend, reached the end of its crowdfunding campaign an hour and a half ago at time of recording, and they did not fund, which isn't really surprising to people who thought about the thing for a second. This is the second Kickstarter from Concept and KJ Inafune, following the hugely successful Mighty No. 9, which isn't out yet. Now, there's two very important sides to that. Except Inafune himself, nobody on the Red Ash team is working on Mighty No. 9, because that's how games are made. You cycle teams during development, and it's not that weird to start funding a second project before the first one is done. Double Fine did exactly the same thing on Kickstarter. But most people don't understand that, and you are crowdfunding. So starting a second project when your first one is overdue and delayed still looks very bad. But the big problem with the Red Ash Kickstarter, like we said before, was that it was very unclear what we were actually supposed to be funding. They were asking $800,000 for the first part of the first act of the game, kind of, and then stretch goals would finish the real game, I think? Oh, and there's a second Kickstarter for an anime also, so it's weird. So then they announced they'd found a publisher. As if talks with Chinese publisher Fuse hadn't been happening already, they announced, surprise! Fuse will fund everything that we've asked for at the base level of the Kickstarter, and whatever you fund will now go to the stretch goals. Unsurprisingly, this resulted in them losing thousands of backers who felt both used and confused. And the thing is, Red Ash looks neat, and I'd be super into playing it, but this is not how you crowdfunding.
You'd think they'd have people to tell them these things.
I have learned to never underestimate the stupidity of people who make business decisions.
And really, that's what BC Day is all about, Graham.
Yeah.
Coming up, there's a fan-made Danganronpa / WWE murder mystery mashup on YouTube? Because of course there is. I think at this point, we all just need to drop kayfabe and admit the WWE is cool again.
I have no idea what Danganronpa is, but what I like is the beginning of that video is like, hey, this might contain spoilers for Danganronpa, but it doesn't contain spoilers for WWE because I don't know anything about wrestling.
Yeah.
Hello, CheckPoint fans! A reminder that CheckPoint, much like everything we do, is now supported by you directly through Patreon. Please check it out. We would really appreciate it.